Guys, it's Prince Rich with Rich Technology Group. Today's video title is a PFSense router compatible with voice over IP? Is a PFSense router compatible with voice over IP? We're going to hop right into it. If you're somebody who is watching this that's thinking about switching to voice over IP and you like PFSense, or you already have an existing PFSense router, or you're researching a PFSense router for voice over IP because of the inexpensive cost and flexibility, this is the video for you. I would encourage you to pause the video really quick, grab a pen and pad, especially if you're like an IT operations manager, IT guy, or director of IT, director of IT, and let me explain some things that we've experienced in the field when working with the PFSense router with a voice over IP phone system. You might be surprised. So let's get started. So the question is, does a PFSense router work with voice over IP? As you guys know, I work with pretty much all of the VoIP carriers, so I've seen the scenarios with PFSense and many other routers with all of them. In short, the answer is yes, but there is a catch. Let's get into this. First of all, most carriers, and by most carriers, I mean most carriers, even the ones that you guys see on my channel that I represent heavily, promote heavily, and brag about, Vonage Business, Nextiva, Jive, Ring Central, all of these ones that I've mentioned, most of these carriers will state on their website, or their technical support will state, that a PFSense router is not supported. What does that mean? And the reason why I want to talk about this, yes and no. The reason they typically say that it's not supported is because their technicians, most technicians at most of these tech supports, regular customer service definitely, and even the high-level support at most of these carriers, these guys are not trained to work on PFSense because it's different. It has different interfacing and sometimes more complex interfacing and complex features than your typical routers that most businesses have. So it's not that the guys at most of these customer service departments are not smart enough to work on it. It's just they don't have enough customers using it to really be able to justify training a bunch of staff to work on it. So understand that they will say it's not supported, but that doesn't mean that it necessarily won't work. One of the reasons I want to step back a bit, one of the reasons that you might want to consider a PFSense router is because the price on it is really good, and the control and the flexibility that you have over the software, over the open source software. Not only the control and flexibility of the features over like a network, like a broad scale network where you've got multi-tenants or whatever, the open source software, and also the flexibility of the type of hardware if you're installing PFSense on your own hardware box versus buying like an actual ready to go PFSense router from PFSense, like from their website. A lot of technicians, especially in high-level deployments, like it because they can install it on a PC or install it on their own hardware that they prefer, like an old Linksys router that has PFSense compatible firmware, or a Cisco router, or whatever. It's the flexibility that is sexy, per se, to most of the IT guys and IT managers and some of your mid to higher level deployments that makes PFSense attractive, especially with the lower price. So anyways, back to what we were saying. The thing that I want you guys to understand that's really important is that a lot of providers will say that they don't support it. I'm going to give you some customer examples that we've worked with that use a PFSense router, and then I'm going to go a little bit more into some technical details and things that you need to consider if you're considering one of these routers with any hosted voice over IP carrier. Okay, so we've got one client in Virginia that is a German-based company, but they have an office in Virginia. Part of the reason that we went with PFSense for these guys, let me just see if I can throw this out there. For those of you who are watching that aren't technical, this might glaze you over. For those of you who are watching that are technical, this will be right up your alley. The issue that we ran into with these guys and why they chose PFSense, it actually wasn't our choice. Even though we told them we thought it was a great idea, it was their German tech support's choice. So this company is a company that is in Richmond, Virginia. They have two very large offices in Richmond, Virginia. One is a small one, and then the other one's a huge like call center type setup. And the problem that they ran into is they obviously have their computers and their files and their server that's on site that is local to the office that's in Richmond, Virginia. Then they have a VPN that they have to access for security reasons, and they cannot deviate from this. To access files and specific CRM software that is proprietary to the company in Germany. Then they've got their Outlook email, which is also on the local computers, but has to be basically communicating through Exchange to the email file in Germany. Oh, it gets better. But the problem is they also have stuff that they need to work on that's local, like their local Wi-Fi, and then their local printer that they print to, and then their voice over IP phone system, which is on the network, which has nothing to do with the German VPN and German tech support or Outlook or any of that. So they have all these different layers of things that they need to run the company, but there's an issue with segregation of all of those things for security reasons. Now, we weren't really sure what to get with for these guys, but that's when their German tech support out of Germany basically said, hey, we're IT professionals. We've done the research. We know it's compatible with our systems in Germany. It should be compatible with your systems in the office in Richmond, and it has the ability to create separate VPN and VLAN and all that. Let's go with the PFSense box. So these guys had already did the research. When we set it up in conjunction with the client, everything went smoothly. Even though the voice over IP provider said it's not supported, it actually had all of the things that the VoIP provider said that it needed to have in order to work correctly with the voice over IP provider. It had the ability to cut off SIP ALG. It had the ability to create a custom firewall rules in the firewall and give priority to the voice over IP phone system so that there weren't any problems alongside everything else on the network. It also had the ability for QoS, for quality of service, which is specifically designed for the care and transport of VoIP packets, of voice over IP protocol or VoIP protocol, basically without any issues with other things on the network. And it worked. We've never had any issues with it. Yeah, we've had to replace like switches and things like that here and there, but to this day, this customer going with the VoIP phone system for, I want to say, 3.5 years now, we've not had any problems with it. So that's one example there, but I have more. I had a church that contacted me a couple of years back that ended up getting a voice over IP phone system from me that was exactly 45 extensions. When he called me, this guy was extremely knowledgeable and he knew his stuff. He called me up and he said, I'm already looking at this carrier. I see on your website that you support them. Can we get them? But I want to make sure that it's going to work with the PFSense box. When I told him I thought PFSense was a great idea, he cut me off right then and there and said, Prince, you're speaking to the choir. Play on words there. You're preaching to the choir. I'm an IT guy. I've been doing this for like 17 years. I already did extensive research on PFSense, and I know it's what I want with my new voice over IP phone system. I got with the carrier, and this guy actually lucked out because I got with the guy at the carrier support that I knew well, and the guy told me, hey, I just want to say as an unofficial disclaimer, we don't support PFSense, but that's not because we don't support PFSense, because it's not because our software and our voice over IP platform won't work with PFSense. It's simply because we say we don't support it because not enough of our technicians are trained on it. But I know it well. I use it at my home. We got lucky on this one. And I would be more than happy to work with your client on this one and set him up and work with him directly on the settings that we need to do in the router. And so that was a match made in heaven. The client ended up putting 45 voice over IP phones on a network that had 3 separated locations on the campus on a PFSense router. And everything worked perfectly. And we were good to go there. Example number 3, and this was one that I actually worked physically. As you guys know, I work with a lot of people that are all across the United States everywhere. And so most of the accounts that I work, I don't actually get to physically see them. Even though I know enough to be able to work with them without having to go there, I have had the privilege in our home state of Virginia of working with many accounts that we worked on that basically went with our solution, and I got to actually see the install in progress. In some cases, from new building with nothing in it to phones on the desk to wiring in the walls and everything. But this was one that I got a chance to see myself. So basically, a friend of mine way back when that was a property manager contacted me and said, "Hey, I work with a church that they not only want to switch to VoIP and want to talk to you, They have about 60,000 square foot of rental property on the church campus, and they would like for you to be the guy that when people come in and basically, rent space, you can help them get their phone and internet service so that that's something that they don't have to deal with to make their move into their new space easier. The problem was this church basically had one uniform network and one giant fiber circuit that was allowed for the tenants so that they had internet that, to be used. But the church didn't want for their phone system and their printers and network to be on the same network with all these other people's voice over IP phone system for security reasons and things like that. What did we do? One of my technicians at the time proposed a PFSense router. The reason we went with a PFSense router was it literally gave us the ability to put this one router in this church and create multiple VLANs, which for those of you who don't know or are watching this, it stands for virtual LAN. We were able to create somewhere around like 15 multiple VLANs on the network for the church themselves and for their other like 12 to 14 tenants, so that they could have their own network with their own wireless access points, their own voice over IP phone system from whatever carrier they chose, even if it was different from the church's, their own printers that they could print to on their own network. It was a match made in heaven. The funny thing was because this church had multiple tenants, I was able to see firsthand because different people were coming to me saying, well, I want to go with Nextiva for these reasons, or we already have Jive Communications, or we want to go with Founders Business, or we've already got 8x8 voice over IP from another carrier. We were able to actually run all of those different voice over IP phone systems on the same PFSense router, segregated from each other. And the church to this day, as far as I know, to my knowledge, it's been in there for almost 5 years. They never had any problems with anything. Nobody ever calling me about dropped packets, this and that, so on and so forth. So anyways, that is the examples that I've got for you guys. Let's see here. Things to consider. As I already stated earlier in the video, you need to ask the provider if a PFSense router is supported. Now, I know you're probably wondering, Prince, why are you telling me to ask them that when you told me already that even though a lot of providers say that they don't support it, it can still work. What you're looking for here, and this is something that I can do for you on your behalf, because as you know, I represent all the providers. What we're looking for here is, if a provider gives a hard no. If a provider says, what you're basically looking for is for a provider to say, which most of them will say, it does work, but our technicians don't support it, but we do have some clients that run it, and it does work in our experiences, but we don't really support it. That's what you're looking for. What you're also looking for, so that you don't get yourself in a bind where you've bought a PFSense router and signed a contract and you're stuck with the PFSense router and then you got to go buy something else, is you're looking to see if the provider says, absolutely not, we've had known problems with it, customers say that it does this, it does that, it's on our blacklist, it's on our do not use list. If you hear that, don't go with that provider if you already have the router, or don't, buy the router if you already have that provider, is basically what I'm saying. But that's typically not the case in my experiences, and I've worked with at least 4 providers that I know support it off the top of my head. So short of it is find out from the provider, or, which I prefer, so that I can help you and get credit, call me and let me talk to the provider on your behalf and find out if they support PFSense or not. It's not a waste of my time. It doesn't bother me at all. That's what I'm here for. Let's see here. Another second thing to consider. If you're thinking about getting a PFSense router, you need somebody that's technically savvy to install these. These are a very complex router. This is not something that you're going to get on the shelf at Walmart. So this is not your typical $100 like cheap router from Walmart or something like that. If you're somebody who's watching this, what I would assume most of the people who have found this video are, that is in a position of IT decision making within the company, or you're the IT operations manager or whatever it may be, that's fine. Go ahead and get your PFSense router. If you're somebody who is not that person, you are not the IT guy, or you have an IT person or something like that, you need to contact your IT person and let them install this. I don't think you're going to be able to install a PFSense router on your own. I'm just being honest. They're a very powerful, complex router, but as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. You need to either be the IT guy or IT professional, or you need to hire one to set this thing up for you, not only for your voice over IP phone system, but for your actual network as well, because it's a fairly in-depth setup, but it's well worth it and well worth the price of the router and the low maintenance on the thing if you have one in the long run. Let's see here. Always have service provider do that. Point number 3, which is another really big one. I recommend that you always have the service provider do the once over. What is the once over? What we call the once over at Rich Technology Group is when the service provider for all new customers goes into the router and makes the changes makes all of their suggested changes. Now, some of the service providers will not do that in a router that they claim they don't support, but some will. I've had some providers like Vonage Business say, hey, we don't really support this router, but I can have my guys go in and make some changes in the firewall and just double check your settings and make sure that everything that we think is going to potentially cause a problem with your voice over IP system has been changed and has been taken care of. So I recommend that you always get your customer service or technical support for the provider that you have to give them remote access to your network, to look into the router settings and just kind of give their thumbs up and say, those are the settings that we would have chose if we had done it for you. So there you have it. Let's see here. Final thoughts. I think that PFSense is a great choice, but again, if you're not sure, you need to always check with the provider. If you're looking for new service, if you already have a provider, I recommend you contact your provider and just point blank ask them, we're thinking about upgrading our network to PFSense. Does it play nice with your voice over IP? If you're thinking about voice over IP and you're watching this video and you also like PFSense, call me. I can call the provider on your behalf, the one you're maybe thinking of switching to, or we can look at some together that we know support PFSense and make sure that we know it's going to work and go from there. So again, that concludes this video. Prince Rich with Rich Technology Group, your go-to guy for the best deals on business phone and internet service in the United States. I'll catch you guys again in the next video.